It's a non-negotiable if you want to get a job in UX design. There's not that many opportunities here. You're gonna have to get in the same mindset. I would say this is by far the hardest phase in becoming a UX designer. So this time around, I would invest way more in, but now knowing what I know, I would definitely do a different strategy. I became a UX designer 6 years ago and I have learned a ton. I've made mistakes, I've failed, I've succeeded, I've peeked behind too many curtains, and in this economy, in this America, in this new year, if I were to become a UX designer all over again, I'd actually do a lot of things differently. So in this video, we're gonna go over everything I would do differently if I were to start over from scratch and try to become a UX designer in this new year. In order to explain everything I do differently, it would require us to look at the timeline of becoming a UX designer. So let's go back to the beginning. Now, the timeline of becoming a UX designer goes as follows. You have the discovery stage, is where you're trying to figure out if you even want to pursue UX design. You have the learning stage, that's when you're learning about UX, and then you have the job application stage. I'm gonna go through each stage and tell you what I would do differently within each of those. So depending on where you're at in your journey, or you haven't even started yet, you'll have some tips and tricks to help you along the way. Let's start with the discovery stage. This is the stage where you're like, what is UX? I wanna do something different with my life. Now, this phase is all about research. And before we jump into what I do differently, let me tell you what I did just to give you some context. It's pretty obvious, but basically I was just trying to figure out what a UX designer does. So that's me like going on YouTube and watching a bunch of day in the lives. I read a ton of Medium articles, and I won't lie to you, I was looking at a ton of different other careers like acupuncturist or like marketing manager or like event planner, but with UX design I was pretty hooked instantly. But what would I change now that it's been 6 years, and is there anything I would do differently in this discovery stage? Let me tell you, the first year of being a UX designer, I already was like, oopsies, I don't think I did enough research, because I realized I was doing a lot of things that I didn't like. Some examples of those things were like too many meetings or a lot of debating, and at that time it basically felt like arguing. I was like, is this a scene straight out of Bad Girls Club? I have a lot more to say about the things that I don't like about UX design, so you're gonna want to check one of these videos out next, because that just goes into way more in depth into a rant, and I can't rant right now, okay? I don't have the time. We gotta keep moving. It's kind of wild though, because that's why I started this channel, because back then all the content that I was consuming was very much glamorizing UX as a job. All of them were posted by universities or the programs itself or the boot camps themselves, so of course they were going to be a little bit biased. So basically what I was seeing was like money, MacBooks everywhere, free sushi for lunch, and tech bros in Arc'teryx vests. That one still exists. But what it didn't do is that it didn't highlight the fact that being a UX designer is not 100% about designing. I explained that way more in my recent video about how I barely use Figma anymore, so check that one out next. Open a new tab, get after it after you watch this whole video. So now that you have context about what I used to do, let me tell you what I would do today. The first one is getting the ugly truth. I know, it's giving True Detective, it's giving Sherlock Holmes, it's giving Perez Hilton digging up dirt and scandals. Since my time, there is so many more creators out there in the UX industry, in the tech field, over on TikTok or Instagram, or more here on YouTube, that are willing to talk about the raw truth of what it's like working in tech or working as a UX designer. The second avenue would actually be to go on LinkedIn and get over any kind of cringe and reach out to first connections or second connections or anyone that you know that works as a UX designer, and literally asking them their story and being like, tell me the tea, girl. I also would highly suggest, if you cannot find a UX designer on LinkedIn that you can talk to, find someone adjacent, like product managers, engineers. What is their experience like working with UX designers? And does that sound something like you would want to do? Basically what I'm telling you to do here is block out the noise from all of these universities or UX programs or courses, so you feel like you have a credible source to give you the real story. Because what I would hate to do if I had to start over is pour like $6,000 or $10,000 into some type of program or course, or like hours and hours of my own self-taught time just to figure out that I'm not even gonna like the career. And I would hate to feel like I wasted any of that when I just should have done more research up front. I will put a disclaimer here and say, like, yes, I do have a lot of videos about joining boot camps and the boot camp that I joined, and I do have links in my descriptions. Like, I will not sugarcoat you on that. But that's because I genuinely think it worked out for me. But I want you to make your own decision on that. I don't want anyone else to influence you to feel like you have to. Now, the second thing is market research. Since I broke into the UX field, a lot has changed in the tech industry. We're seeing more layoffs. We're seeing potentially more companies taking on less roles. And so I would do the extra layer of due diligence and figuring out if UX is in demand based off of where you live. I also do talk about the changes in the UX market right now, so I would also watch that video next. So let me give you an example. For me in San Diego, UX is not a hot market. So when I decided to become a UX designer, I should have done a little bit more research to figure out if there was enough UX design jobs here in San Diego, instead of just kind of jumping into it and hoping that the amount of UX jobs that were going to stay in San Diego were going to be that way, because now, I won't lie to you, there's not that many opportunities here. So I just would take the time to really figure out and make sure that that this career is going to pay off in the long run, and that you're going to be able to have opportunities way, way, way into the future based off of like your lifestyle and where you want to live geographically. Also, aside from where you actually live, you're also going to want to think about how you want to work. So when I say that, I mean like remote, hybrid, flex, like going to the office. I've just been seeing less and less remote roles, which is very unfortunate, at least like for me, because I love to stay home and I just want to like wear my comfy sweatpants and be a slug and then like cuddle my dog whenever I want and go over and like give him a kiss and then like go back to work. Like, I can't imagine not doing that. Honestly, I think I could only go back into the office if they let me bring my baby. Let's move on to the next phase, which is learning UX. This is where most people would start to think about, how do I want to learn UX, whether that's self-taught or university or a course or boot camp. And I do have a video on that, which I will link up here. It is so important to take the time to figure out how you're going to learn UX based off of cost and your lifestyle and your learning pace. This might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, so don't sue me. It's all great and all to be in Figma and learn how to design and move buttons around and learn all the different hover states and wireframing and prototyping and UX research, but to be fully transparent with you, I don't think living in pixel land was 100% worth my time. But don't get me wrong, learning the ins and outs of a design process is incredibly important. Like, you literally have to do it. It's a non-negotiable if you want to get a job in UX design. However, if I were to redo this all over again, I wouldn't put so much time into it, because in a way, boot camp kind of took care of a lot of that for me. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. The problem that I have with what I was doing was that when I was learning UX design, I'd say like 99% of it was like UX design, prototyping, UI design, wireframing, and I was severely lacking learning about any soft skills. So if I were to take that same pie, instead of 99% of UX design, I would take at least 30 to 40% learning about soft skills and learning about how to work with people as a UX designer, how to navigate politics as a UX designer, how to communicate your designs and articulate them and defend them and make sure that they keep moving forward. Look at it this way. Boot camp is essentially like school, and school teaches you math and science and the curriculum, and you do homework and whatever. But what school doesn't teach you is those group school projects. Trauma, literal trauma. We were not equipped to handle different personalities in a group, and like, you have the slacker, you have someone who just takes lead, you have someone who just kind of coasts by. That's going to be what it's like being a UX designer, especially when you work in a triad, which is you, product manager, and a tech lead. It is the same exact thing. So this time around, I would invest way more in communicating with stakeholders and communicating your designs. And honestly, developing the right relationships so you can move forward. I hate saying this, but like, it is a corporate game. Let's move on to the next phase, which is finding a job. I would say this is by far the hardest phase in becoming a UX designer, because it is not easy. You have to have thick skin and you have to have some serious motivation. But in this new year, my job hunting strategy would be so much more different than what I would have done years ago. And by the way, I do have a lot more other videos going into depth about what the UX job market is like and how to adapt based off of your personality and your strategy and your background. So I'll link those down in the bottom, but I'll sum up some of my main points for you here. As I say some of these points out loud, I'm realizing that they're kind of in the phase of learning UX design, but also job applying. They might have a little bit of an overlap, so don't sue me. If I did a redo, the first thing I would do before job applying is actually learn about AI. The amount of times I've had to say this word this year, and as much as I hate talking about it because it's incessant, I think learning about conversational AI or image recognition or VR or any type of AI that you might be passionate about would be so helpful for me, because it would automatically, I think, give me a little bit of a leg up in the game, because so many companies are obsessed with this word right now. Like, if they're obsessed, you're gonna have to get in the same mindset. And I know you're probably like, how in the world am I supposed to access learning about AI design if I don't even have projects with actual stakeholders and I'm just trying to learn the basics? In the criteria of getting a new job in UX, I would say this is a nice to have. I would not say this is a must have, but if you have the time and you have the brain bandwidth for it, why not? And again, this is what I would do, and this is like a Mimi who has an abundance of time to where she's giving up having her wine on the weekend and going completely dark on YouTube. Another thing I would do differently is I would just do a lot more trial and error. I was just doing what bootcamp told me to do. But now, knowing what I know, I would definitely do a different strategy, especially with my portfolio. Back then with my portfolio, I was doing different case studies. I was really diversifying what I was putting on my portfolio. I would do like a mobile case study, a redesign, an e-commerce. But now I think I would try a different approach. And I actually have a video out, literally the most recent one, and it's talking about niching your portfolio down. And in that video, I go through a step-by-step on exactly how to do it. So I would look at that video next. I would just try a lot more and tinker my process as I'm going, because clearly at some point, what I was doing wasn't working, but I was too afraid to change it. And I really think we need to get in the better mindset of being UX designers and iterating based off of what we're seeing and the output. Same process that we use in UX design, I would very much apply that to my job search. If you're in the midst of looking for a UX design job and you need a little bit more motivation and you need some comfort, then I would say watch these two videos next, and I will see you next time. Bye.